There's this one sentence, one single verse from the Bible that's just everywhere. It's broken out of the church and into the wider world. You've definitely seen it. You've probably heard it. Maybe you even memorized it as a kid. But today, we're going to dig in and go way beyond just the words to unpack the surprising story behind it.
And there it is, John 3:16. I mean, for millions of people, this is it. This is the heart of their faith, all boiled down into one sentence. It's this powerful statement of love, sacrifice, and hope. But if we just stop here, if we just read the words on the screen, we miss the incredible context that gives it its real power.
And that's really the big question we're tackling in this explainer. What was actually happening right before these famous words were spoken? Who was Jesus talking to? The answer, well, it kind of changes everything about how you see this verse. So first things first, let's just take a second to appreciate how massive this verse is in our culture. Seriously, it's not just tucked away in a religious book, it's become this public symbol, a piece of cultural shorthand that everybody recognizes. According to a sermon from the Hanford-Laton Church of the Nazarene, this verse has been a pop culture staple for decades. I mean, think about that guy who used to pop up at football games in the 80s holding up a John 3:16 sign, or quarterback Tim Tebow with a verse written under his eyes. It's just everywhere. But because it's so familiar, we kind of gloss over what it really means. So, how do we get past that familiarity? Well, we're going to turn to that very sermon by Pastor Ken. He really challenges his church to look deeper, to go back to the original conversation where this verse first popped up. And look, the pastor's goal isn't to tear down the verse, not at all. It's to build it up by asking some simple questions. What was Jesus actually talking about right before he said it? Who was listening? What was the point he was trying to make? Okay, so let's set the scene. Picture this. Jesus is talking, probably late at night, with this guy named Nicodemus. And Nicodemus isn't just anybody. He's a top-tier, highly respected religious leader. This is all happening right after Jesus has caused this huge scene at the temple in Jerusalem. So Nicodemus is curious, but he's also really confused. And Jesus, instead of giving him a straight answer, tells him this old, really weird story. And this is where things get really interesting. This is the key analogy from the whole sermon. To explain what he's all about, Jesus reaches way back into ancient Hebrew history and pulls out this wild story, a story about deadly snakes. Okay, so the story goes like this. The ancient Hebrews are out in the desert, they're complaining, they're rebelling against God. So as a judgment, the camp gets infested with venomous snakes. People are getting bit, they're dying, and there's no cure. So they cry out to Moses for help, and God gives him these bizarre instructions. Make a snake out of bronze, put it on a pole, and lift it up high. And get this, anyone who looked at that bronze snake, believing it was God's solution, would be healed. Now, the pastor really hammers this point home. The snake itself wasn't magic. It was all about trusting in God's remedy. So here's where you can really see the parallel Jesus was drawing for Nicodemus. Back then, the problem was a physical poison, a snake bite. The pastor says that for all of us, the problem is a spiritual condition he calls sin. The cure then was to look at the serpent lifted up on a pole. The cure now is to believe in Jesus, who was lifted up on a cross. The result then was physical life. The result now, eternal life. And here's the kicker. This is the story Jesus tells immediately before he says the words of John 3:16.
Now, understanding that story about the snake, it forces you to completely rethink a really big word, a word the pastor spends a lot of time on. It's about redefining the entire concept of sin.
The pastor says that most of us think of sin as a list of bad things we do, right? Lying, stealing, you name it. But in this story, sin isn't an action, it's a condition. It's a state of being. It's like that snake venom flowing through your veins. The pastor describes it as this fundamental separation from God that affects every single one of us. And the pastor uses this really powerful example. He says, imagine someone gets out of prison, they quit drugs, they become this amazing member of the community. They've stopped all their bad actions. But then he asks, does that, on its own, change their fundamental status, their separation from God? And his answer is a blunt, no, it doesn't. The venom, so to speak, is still there. And this all builds to a really mind-bending conclusion in the sermon. The world isn't condemned for the bad things it does. It's already in a state of condemnation because of this separation. So from this point of view, Jesus didn't come to condemn a world that was already in that state. He came to offer the cure. He came to show everyone the bronze serpent.
Okay, so that's the big theological idea, right? But what are you supposed to do with that information? This is where the sermon pivots from this deep explanation to a very direct call to action for everyone listening.
So here's where the pastor brings it all home. He says, if the solution in the story was for Jesus to be lifted up, just like that snake was, then the mission for believers today is to keep doing that work. The main job, the number one task of the church, he says, is to lift Jesus up. But what does that actually look like? And he's not talking about something abstract here. He gives really specific, everyday examples. It means showing genuine love to the people around you. It means when you have disagreements, you work through them respectfully. It means focusing on your own personal transformation, allowing yourself to be changed for the better, even in small ways. It's about being an example that actually reflects Jesus to other people. And this is a huge point he makes, a really big deal. The pastor argues that this primary task, lifting Jesus up, is way more important than any political agenda, more important than our personal feelings about what's wrong with society, and definitely more important than the urge to just point out the sins of other people. The main job is to present the cure, not just to keep diagnosing the disease. So in the end, this deep dive completely transforms John 3:16. It's not just a bumper sticker to memorize anymore. It's a daily mission. And the question it leaves you with isn't just, do I believe this verse, but something much more active. Based on its full story, the real question is, how am I living it? How do you, in your own life, lift up the people and the ideas that bring healing and hope to a world that really, really needs it?